Now, short of having you all try what the kids did and turning upside down, I'm going to try a different exercise with you. I'm going to say this, and you tell me, you finish it for me. The grass is always greener. No news is... Children should be seen, not... Yeah, I'm sorry, that one is incorrect. According to second graders who were asked to finish familiar adages, the correct answer is now, children should be seen, not fancy. I know, but let me give you a few other updates to our collective wisdom from the mouths of 7 and 8-year-olds as found on TikTok videos. When life gives you lemons, you just eat them. You can't teach an old dog because he has bad hearing. You can't have your cake and a cupcake. You can't have your cake without frosting. When the going gets tough, I will help stray cats. I know, my favorite. We can all go home. The grass is always greener when it's daytime. You know, as the wise Jedi Master Yoda said, truly wonderful the mind of a child is. With his voice, I'm not going to imitate, of course. I don't know about you, but I like some of these better than the originals. And I wonder why that is. Why do we enjoy the answers that children give to riddles or to questions during a moment of wonder? In part, it's because their straightforward and literal thinking can reveal what they actually care about, and sometimes it even makes more sense than the original saying. I mean, who can doubt the sincerity of the child who said when the going gets tough, they want to help stray cats? Sometimes their sincerity and literal thinking combine with their imaginations in ways that are humorous, but no less wise. But most often, their responses delight us precisely because they surprise us with answers and perspectives we weren't expecting. Sometimes I wonder if the teachings and stories of Jesus that we have in our Gospels weren't so much sermons like today's Sermon on the Mount, but rather snippets from the moments of wonder he taught the kids and the crowds. You know, his children's moments' greatest hits, and that's what made it in. Look at the wisdom he shares in the Beatitudes today. Jesus is doing the same thing here as the children were doing with our old sayings, albeit in a much less charming way than a 7-year-old. He's taking common assumptions, expectations, explanations, and he's messing them all up on purpose. And similar to our experience with these children's sayings, his audience wasn't expecting his answers either. Now, the idea of blessing would not have been foreign to the Jewish crowds who were following him around Galilee. Indeed, they likely strived to be faithful adherents of Judaism in hopes that they'd receive God's blessings. After all, they'd come to understand that theologically, the exile and the destruction of Jerusalem hundreds of years earlier were tied to their ancestors' disobedience of God's commands. Things like neglecting to care for the vulnerable and committing idolatry. So this is a people who have inherited the trauma of exile and domination and who have personally known the withering nature of trying to survive under their current occupation. All of this while being pressured to assimilate into the dominant culture of the Roman Empire that had its own value system that prized wealth and honor and power over most everything else. All of that is in the water for the audience of Matthew's Gospel and for the crowds following Jesus around. Now, the Roman Empire's understanding of blessing was a kind of good fortune or happiness that was often seen as a gift from the gods or something the gods themselves experienced. And it looked like wealth and health and success. But the people in the crowd needed to be reminded of the heart of their faith and the blessedness that emanates from the heart of their God. The ads and commercials of their day would have been reinforcing something like, "Fortunate, happy, and blessed are those who have wealth and health, success and honor, and add honor to their name." So what does Jesus say? Blessed or fortunate are the poor in spirit, and those who are mourning, and the meek, and those who hunger and thirst for justice, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, those who are persecuted. He's saying, blessed and fortunate are you when people revile you and persecute you and lie about you. In other words, you lucky winners. Though it sounded more like lucky losers. Can you imagine the shock? Boy, you're really living the dream when you're poor, grieving, and persecuted. All of you should be wicked thankful when you're hungry and people hate you and lie about you. It doesn't quite land right. Jesus is speaking to a people who need encouragement. They need a boost to their spirits, and they need to be given courage, encouraged for the living of their faith. He is elevating their condition. He's honoring it, and he's reminding them that God is with them through it all. And he surprises them with what God's blessings really are and where they're found. And he emphasizes it by phrasing the Beatitudes like he does. That is reminiscent of another writer's intention, to make one of his characters sound wiser. He used a literary device known as anastrophe to slow down our listening. From the Greek, the word anastrophe literally means turning back or turning around or even turning upside down. And in grammar, it means the reversal of words so that the syntax is changed. Truly wonderful, the mind of a child is. The greatest teacher, failure is. Oh, much to learn you still have. Just making sure you're still listening. You see, George Lucas wrote anastrophe into the character of Yoda from Star Wars to get our attention and to upend our expectations. It had the added benefit of making him sound wiser, too, but Lucas was also trying to convey that even by his language and syntax, Yoda was resisting conformity to the rules of grammar, literally, but to the dominant oppressive empire, metaphorically. And here, Jesus is using anastrophe in the Beatitudes. Not quite as jarringly as the Jedi Master, but he inverts the sentence by putting the adjective at the beginning, followed by the verb, and then the subject. You don't have to remember all that, but just think of it this way. Typically, we speak like this: the meek are fortunate, not fortunate are the meek. Brent is good, not good is Brent. You see what I'm saying? Jesus, or at least the author of Matthew, is inverting the syntax to emphasize his point, both to gain our attention, but also to underscore his message of nonconformity to the ways and wisdom of the empire. The empire might say the wealthy, healthy, and respected are blessed, but I'm telling you, truly fortunate are the ones who are poor and grieving and persecuted. It's almost as if Jesus was suggesting that when we talk like the empire, we'll think like the empire. But if we turn our language upside down and inside out, our hearts might follow suit. That's because the syntax of grace is anastrophic. It's inverted, unexpected, inexplicable. And it's the logic of the kingdom of heaven, too. Over and over, Jesus will speak of the kingdom of heaven in Matthew's gospel, and over the ways that Jesus describes the kingdom of heaven, often without a literal definition, are imaginative and metaphorical, and they speak to reality and a perspective that sees the true order of things as God prioritizes them, and not how empires and societies often arrange us. The kingdom of heaven is some Dr. Seussian realm that's upside down and inside out, or better, downside up and outside in, that upends the hierarchies of our dominant cultures and centers our understanding of God not in the power structures of our day, but in the faces of one another, and especially those who've experienced life on the difficult margins of society and under the ruthless hand of oppression. Outside in and downside up. It's a reversal, an inversion, a subversion of the status quo of revenge and intimidation and suppression. For God's children back then, for God's children right now, today. When the cultural wisdom prizes individuality and success and things like make Rome great again, the syntax of grace shocks our system back to its sacred rhythm, reminding us that in the kingdom of heaven, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first, and blessed are the poor and the meek and the persecuted, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's a realm where the leader is killed not for lack of trying, but in order to subvert the entire rationale of violence and power. This is a God who gave up power to walk this life alongside us and to defeat death from within the confines of mortality. The story is anastrophic, a reversal, an inversion, a subversion of what we would expect. Such is the story of Jesus, and such is the nature of the kingdom of heaven. Upside down, inside out, downside up, and outside in, where the poor are the rich ones, and our interior lives don't have to be bottled up. Where the meek are the strong ones, and those seeking justice find their fill. Where mercy and empathy aren't weaknesses, and pure hearts trump exploitation and grifting and deceit every single time. Where the warrior ethos is anathema and peacemaking a rendering of God. Where children should be seen and absolutely learned from. Where old men and women yet dream dreams and young people share their vision. Where hierarchies no longer determine who's free or oppressed, who's in or who's out, who's in charge or who isn't. Where those who are persecuted can take heart and find courage, because in the kingdom of heaven, this news is good news. And the grass is always greener when it's purple. Amen.